All right. Page 566. I point out that these stories of flows of stones are not conventional stories and are not well known. Their details are not standardized like clanking chains in ghost stories and eyes the size of saucers in sea serpent yarns. Somebody in France in the year 1842 told of slow moving stones, and somebody in Sumatra in the year 1903 told of slow moving stones. It would be strange if two liars should invent this circumstance. And that is where I get it when I reason. If strangeness be a standard for unfavorable judgment, I damn at a swipe most of this book. But damnation is nothing to me. I offer the data. Suit yourself. Nobody can investigate the reported phenomena that we're taking up without noticing the number of cases in which boys and girls, but a great preponderance of girls, appear. An explanation by those who disregard a great deal, or disregard normally, is that youngsters are concerned so much because it is their own mischief. Poltergeist phenomena or teleportations of objects in the home of Mr. Frost, 8 Firestone Road, Hornsey, London, for several months early in the year 1921 cannot be so explained. There were 3 children. Phenomena so frightened one of them that in a nervous breakdown she died. Another, in a similar condition, was taken to the Lewisham Hospital. In attempting to rationalize various details that we have come upon, or to assimilate them, or to digest them, the toughest meal is swallowing statements upon mysterious appearances in closed rooms or passages of objects and substances through walls of houses without disturbing the material of the walls. Yes, I have heard of the 4th dimension, but I'm going to do myself some credit by not lugging in that particular way of showing that I don't know what I'm writing about. There's a story in the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, January 27th, 1888, large stones that were appearing and falling slowly in closed rooms in the home of Mr. B.C. Martin, Cadwell County, North Carolina, Madras, India, Mail, March 5th, 1888, pieces of brick that, in the presence of many investigators, were falling in a schoolroom in Pondicherry. I can understand this phenomena, or alleged phenomena, of appearances in closed rooms no more than I can understand the passage of a magnetic field or force through the wall of a house without disturbing the material. But lines of this force do not transport objects through a dense material. Then I think of X-rays, which do something like this if it be accepted that X-rays are aggregations of very small objects or particles. X-rays do, or sometimes do, disturb materials penetrated by them, but this disturbance is not evident until after long continence. If there is teleportation, it is in 2 orders or fields, electric and non-electric, or phenomena that occur during thunderstorms and phenomena that occur under a cloudless sky, and in houses. In the hosts of stories that I have gathered, but with which I have not swamped this book, of showers of living things, the rarest of all statements is of injury to the fallen creatures. Then, from impressions that have arisen from other data, we think that the creatures may have fallen all the way from the sky, but may have fallen from appearing points not high above the ground, or may have fallen a considerable distance under the counter-gravitational influence. I think that there may be a counter-gravitational influence upon transported objects because of the many agreeing accounts, more than I have told of slow falling stones by persons who had probably never heard of other stories of slow falling stones, and because I have come upon records of similar magic or witchcraft in what will be accepted as sane and sober meteorological observations. See the Annual Register, 1859-70, on account of Mr. E.J. Lowe, a meteorologist and an astronomer, of the fall of hailstones at Nottingham, England, May 29, 1859. Though the object were more than an inch across, they fell slowly. In September 1893, near Clermont-Ferrand, France, according to La Nature 7-289, hailstones measuring from an inch to an inch and a half across fell. They were under an unknown influence. Notwithstanding their size, they fell slowly, that they did no damage. Some fell upon roofs and rebounded, and it was as if they shook off the influence. Those that rebounded then fell faster than fell those that came down in an unbroken fall. For other records of this phenomena, see Nature 36-445, Illustrated London News 34-546, Bull Sock Astro de France, June 19, 1900. If in the general electric conditions of the thunderstorm there be sometimes a counter-gravitational effect upon objects, somebody might find out how counter-gravitationally to electrify aircraft and aviators. If all work is opposition to gravitation, somebody may make a discovery of benefit to general laziness. Elevators and skyscrapers might be run with half the power now needed. Here is an idea that may revolutionize industry, but just now I am too busy revolutionizing everything else, and I give this idea to the world with the generosity of somebody who bestows something that isn't any good to him. But mysterious disappearances. Our data have been upon mysterious disappearances. If I could appeal to what used to be supposed to be known as common sense, I'd ask whether something that mysteriously appears somewhere had not mysteriously disappeared somewhere else. Annals of Electricity 6-499, Liverpool, May 11th, 1842. Not a breath of air. Suddenly close on the lines of a common shot upward. They moved way slowly. Smoke from chimneys indicated that above ground there was a southward wind, but the close moved away northward. There was another instance a few weeks later. London Times, July 5th, 1842, a bright clear day at Cupar, Scotland, June 30th. Women hanging out clothes on a common. There was a sharp detonation and clothes on line shot upward. Some fell to the ground, but others went on and vanished. There was a seeming of selection, which, because of possible bearing upon various observations of our interest to me. Though this was a powerful force, nothing but the clothes it seized was affected. I wonder about the detonation, largely because it is in agreement with a detail of still another story. The closeness in time of these two occurrences attracts my attention. They were a few weeks apart, and I have no other such record until 77 years later. A sensible suggestion is that somebody in Cupar, having read the Liverpool story, had faked a similar story from his town. A suggestion that is not so sensible is that in this year, 1842, somebody had learned the secrets of teleportation, and to avoid attracting much attention in any one place, was experimenting in places far apart. It seems likely enough to me that if there be teleportation, human beings may have come upon knowledge of it and may have used it. Likely enough, a spiritualist would say, has he never heard of apports? But whether it's narrowness and bigotry upon my part or not, I do not go to seances for data. I have collected notes upon mysterious robberies, wondering whether a teleportive power has ever been used criminally. As to apports, if a medium could transport seashells from the sea to his cabinet, he could abstract funds from a bank to his pocket. If he could, would not, how? Wait. If he could, but would not, how account for his being a medium? Looking through newspaper, I have had a searching eye for something like an account of a medium who had become mysteriously rich in a town where there had been shortages of funds, clerks accused of embezzlement and convicted, but upon evidence that was not altogether unsatisfactory. Although usually I can find data to prove anything that I want to prove, I have upon no such account, and I am skeptical as to apports, and think that mediums are like most of the rest of us who are not criminals, having no exceptional abilities. However, there may be criminals adepts who are not known mediums. There was in June 1919 at Islip, Northampton, England, an occurrence like the occurrence at Liverpool and Cupar. London Daily Express, June 12, 1919. A loud detonation, basket full of clothes shooting into the air. Then the clothes came down. There may be ineffective teleportative seizures. London Daily Mail, May 6, 1910. Phenomena near Cantalina, Spain. From 10 o'clock in the morning until noon, May 4th. Stone shot up from a spot in the ground. Loud detonations were heard. Traces of an extinct volcano are visible at the spot, and it is believed that a new crater is being formed. There is no findable record of volcanic activity in Spain at this time, nor at any other time. I am reminded of loud noises that often accompany poltergeist disturbances. In Niles' Weekly Register, November 4th, 1815, there is an account of stones that had been washed rising in a field near Marbleton, Ulster County, New York, that these stones had been seen to rise 3 or 4 feet from the ground, then moving horizontally from 30 to 60 feet. Out in open fields, there have been showers of water strictly localized and of unknown origin. A Dr. Neal will be heard from. He has captured, not indefinitely, alluded to insects, but Proconia undata fab. Every mystery has a fishmonger. Considered figuratively, he need not be a seller of fish. His name may be Smith or O'Brien, or it may be Proconia undata fab. But presumably in the wintertime in England, members of the Procona family are not busy and available for explanations. In the Chorley, Lancashire Standard, February 15th, 1873, is a story of excitement in the town of Eccleston. At Bank House, occupied by 2 elderly women and their niece, streams of water started falling about the 1st of February, seemingly from the ceilings. Furniture was soaked, and the occupants of the house were alarmed. The falls seemed to come from the ceiling, but probably the most singular feature of the affair is that ceilings were apparently quite dry. See back to Mr. Grothendieck's story of objects that were appearing near a ceiling or roof with no signs of penetrating the material. Workmen had been called to the house and had investigated, but were unable to explain. Openness again, house packed with neighbors watching the showers. This data would make trouble for spiritualistic mediums and the requirements for special or closed conditions and at least semi-darkness if mediums were bothered by more than unquestioning or occasionally politely questioning faith. If some of them had been knocked out a bit, they were relatively few. Nobody in the house sat in a cabinet. Nobody was a logician. Nobody reasonably argued that chemists, for instance, must have special conditions or their reactions will not work out. For instance, said nobody, how could you develop a photograph except in the special conditions of darkness or semi-darkness? The look to me is that throughout what is loosely called nature, teleportation exists as a mean of distribution of things and materials, and that sometimes human beings have command, mostly unconsciously, through perhaps sometimes as a development from research and experiment of this force. It is said that the savage tribes there are rainmakers, and it may be that among savages there are teleportationists. Some years ago, I have looked superior if anybody had said this to me, but a good many of us are not so given to the tut as we used to be. It may be that in civilized communities, because of their storages, a power to attract flows of water being no longer needed has virtually died out, still appearing occasionally, however. It could be that in reading what most persons think are foolish little yarns of falling stones, we are visionarily in the presence of cosmic constructiveness, or that once upon a time this whole earth was built up by streams of rocks teleported from other parts of an existence. The crash of falling islands, the humps of piling continents, and then the cosmic humor of it all, or utmost spectacularity functioning, then declining and surviving only as a vestige, or that the force that once heaped the peaks of the Rocky Mountains now slings pebbles at a couple of farmers in Trenton, New Jersey. So I conceive of the existence of a force and the use of it unconsciously, mostly by human beings. It may be that if somebody gifted with what we think we mean by agency fiercely hates somebody else, he can, out of intense visualizations, direct by teleportation bombardments of stones upon his enemy. Water falls on a tree in Oklahoma. It is told of in an entomological magazine. Waters fall in a house in Eccleston. I read that in a spiritualist periodical, though I went to the newspaper for the data. These are the isolations or the specializations of conventional treatments. I tell of water falling upon a tree in Oklahoma and of water falling in a house in Eccleston, and I think that both phenomena are manifestations of one force. It is my attempt to smash false demarcations, to take data away from narrow and exclusive treatments by spiritualists, astronomers, meteorologists, entomologists, also denying the validity of usurpations of words and ideas by metaphysicians and theologians. But my interest is not only that of a unifier, It is in bringing together seeming incongruities and finding that they have affinity. I have very much I am very much aware of the invigoration of products of ideas that are foreign to each other if they mate. This is exogamy, practiced with thoughts to fertilize the volcanic eruption with a storm of frogs, or to mingle the fall of an edible substance from the sky with an unexplained appearance of cagliostro. But I am a pioneer and no purist, and some of these students of introducing vagabond ideas to each other may have about the eugenic value of some of the romances in houses of ill fame. I cannot expect to be both promiscuous and respectable. Later, most likely, some of these unions will be properly licensed. Sometimes, in what I call teleportations, there seems to be agency, and sometimes not. That the agency is not exclusively human and has nothing to do with spirits of the departed is indicated, I suppose, if we accept that sometimes there are occult powers of trees. Some other time I may be able more clearly to think out an expression upon flows of pigeons to their homes and flows of migratory birds as teleportive or quasi-teleportive. My suggestion as to the frequently reported agency of children is that occult forces were, in earlier times of human affairs, far more prevalent and far more necessary to help and maintenance of human communities than they are now, with political and economic mechanisms somewhat well established, working after a fashion, and that, wherein children are atavistic, they may be in rapport with forces that mostly human beings have outgrown. Though, just as I present, I am no darling of the popes, I expect to end up holy some other time with a general expression that all stories of miracles are not lies or are not altogether lies, and that in the primitive conditions of the Middle Ages there were hosts of occurrences that now, considerably, though not altogether, have been outgrown. Anybody who broadly accepts the doctrine of relativity should accept that there are phenomena that exist relatively to one age, that do not or do not so pronouncedly exist in another age. I more or less accept a great deal of that religionists piously believe. As I see myself, I represent a modernization of the old-fashioned atheist who so sweepingly denied everything that seemed to infer with his disbeliefs. There are, of course, other explanations of the occult powers of children. One is that children, instead of being atavistic, may occasionally be far in advance of adults, foreshadowing coming human powers because their minds are not stifled by conventions. After that, they go to school and lose their superiority. Few boy prodigies have survived an education. The outstanding suggestion, which, however, like many other suggestions I cannot now develop, is that if teleportation exists, it may be used. It may be criminally used, or it may be used commercially. Cargoes without ships and freights without trains may be of the traffics of the future. There may be teleportive voyages from planet to planet. Altogether, so many of our data are bound up with jokes, hoaxes, and flippant treatments that I think of the toy and play genesis of many practical inventions. Billions of dollars are today seriously drawing dividends from toys and games that were put to work. Billions of laughs and jeers have preceded solemn expressions of satisfaction with fat bank accounts. But this is only reasoning and is nothing but logic and argument, and there have been billions of laughs that never turned into anything more satisfactory. Through where do I get the idea that there is anything more satisfactory than a laugh? If, in other words, or in other parts of one relatively little existence, there be people who are far ahead of terrestrians, perhaps teleportatively, being from other places, have come to this earth and have seen nothing to detain them. Or perhaps some of the more degraded ones have felt at home here and have hung around or have stayed here. I think of these fellows as throwbacks, concealing their origin, of course, having perhaps only a slightly foreign appearance, having affinity with our barbarisms which their own races had cast off. I think of a feeling for this earth in other worlds as corresponding to the desire of most of us now and then to go to the South Sea Island and be degraded. Throwbacks translated to this earth would not, unless intensely atavistic, take to what we regard as vices, but to what their own far advanced people regard as perhaps unmentionable, or anyway unprintable degradations. They would join our churches and wallow in pews. They'd lose all sense of decency and become college professors. Let a false start, and the decline is swift. They'd end up as members of Congress. There is another view for which I am now gathering material. New York Times, December 6, 1913. Nope, 1930. Scores die, 300 stricken by poison fog in Belgium. Panic grips countryside. Origin complete mystery. War scenes recalled. It may be that it was war. Mostly, explanations by the scientists were just about what one would expect, but in the New York Telegram, December 6, Professor H. Sheldon was quoted. If there is a widespread lethal fog in the Meuse Valley, the conclusion of science would be that it is being deliberately caused by men or women. It may be that inhabitants of other worlds or other parts of one organic existence have declared war upon this earth and have discharged down here, sometimes under cover of fogs, volumes of poisonous gases. I have other records that may indicate something of this kind, but reluctantly I give up this interesting notion as applied to the occurrence of December 5th, 1930, because it associates with another phenomena of which I shall tell later. Only 2 weeks after the tragedy in Belgium appeared The Fishmonger. The writer of the editorial in the New York Herald Tribune, December 19, 1930, stated, "The conventionalizing of the minimizing and the obscuring that always cloak events that are inconsistent with the main norm of supposed knowledge. One may suspect that a sensational newspaper man counting up the deaths some dark day in the smoky steel towns on the Allegheny River could produce a story not far behind that from Belgium. 77 men and women were struck dead in Belgium. Oh, there's always some commonplace explanation for these occurrences if we only use our common sense."